Hey guys, it's Jack. I wanted to let you know that we're starting a new push for subscriptions here on Human Events Daily. So make sure that when you're listening to this podcast, you hit subscribe, you download it, and you share it with 5 of your friends. Make sure they're all going and downloading as well, because we need to get the signal out as much as possible. Look, we've done so much over the past couple of years since this show started, and we're only going to do so much more. Let's get it. This is what happens when the fourth turning meets fifth generation warfare.
A commentator, international social media sensation, and former Navy intelligence veteran.
This is Human Events with your host, Jack Posobiec.
Christ is king.
No, I'm the boss.
Here in Evian, France, President Trump is insisting his new agreement with Iran will destroy Iran's nuclear ambitions.
It's a very strong deal. Nobody knows what it is, but it's very strong. And most people seem to be very happy. Who's really happy is the market, because the market's gone up thousands of points over the last 4 or 5 days since hearing about it. And the Strait is going to be opening. It's already partially opened. It's going to be opening up soon in full over the next day or two. And the market has gone wild, and oil has come tumbling down. Oil is at $73 to $74, and it's getting to very close to where it was before the crisis. The difference is now we have Iran without a nuclear weapon. So we'll see how that all plays out. I think people are going to be very happy.
After Major League Baseball players on the San Francisco Giants were criticized by Major League Baseball for writing Bible verses on their team-issued Pride Night hats during Friday night's game against the Chicago Cubs, including Landon Roop, a 27-year-old right-hander from Rocky Mount, North Carolina, who started and pitched 4 2/3 innings with Genesis chapter 9, verses 12 through 16 written on his cap next to the rainbow-colored team logo, as you can see there.
We have breaking news. The judge in the United Healthcare CEO murder case says the suspect will try a psychiatric defense.
An Omaha man is now in federal custody, accused of being part of a plot to attack the UFC event at the White House on Sunday. Abraham Hermosillo Alvarez was booked on 2 federal charges: conspiracy to commit an offense against the United States of America and conspiracy to commit murder.
Markey J. Clayton's confirmation hearing was supposed to begin this afternoon, but in a post on Truth Social overnight, President Trump says he is delaying Clayton's nomination to try and force a vote on the Save America bill. In a lengthy 4 a.m. post, the president said in part that he will keep Bill Pulte on as acting director of national intelligence and will not approve the renewal of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, without Congress approving the voter ID bill known as the Save America Act.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. We're here live. It's June 17th, 2026, Anno Domini. President Trump on the move there in moving from one part of France to another, where he is going to be attending a dinner at the Palace of Versailles with Emmanuel Macron later this evening in France. But of course, what we see here in the United States is the highest drama of all. Early this morning, about 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, President Trump canceled the nomination, or hearing, I should say, the confirmation hearing of his DNI permanent nominee, Jay Clayton. He said, "We are canceling the hearing and will not be going forward until Jamie McDonald is approved to be the U.S. attorney," and also says, "I will not approve FISA without the Save America Act going along with it." Not complicated, actually. The Republicans fell into a trap. And that means, indeed, that Bill Pulte, Bill the Bulldog Pulte, will serve as acting DNI until such time as the full approval goes forward. So the president says that because the Democrats broke the deal, he is canceling everything until it is done. He may not be able to get these extraordinary partners approved, and I don't want to take them away, but they need to have the Save America Act passed. So what's the president doing? He's calling the Senate's bluff. Remember, the Senate was up there saying, oh, we can't have Bill the Bulldog Pulte in because he's going to be, just so terrible for national security. By the way, the same type of senators, the same type of establishment club that said the same thing about President Trump when he went up as a man who came from the business community and said that he was going to look at national security quite differently. This is, in fact, what the voters of the United States of America voted for. That's who they chose. They wanted a businessman to put together his team of looking at things differently. Remember, Elon Musk was a huge part of this as well with Doge. Bill Pulte, coming from the business community, is no different. The idea is to bring people in who have a different objective view of things. They don't come from the intelligence community. They don't come from the swamp. And that's why the president chooses the people he has chosen around him. But the swamp was very, very upset about Bill the Bulldog. Oh, the swamp responded in the only way they can, circling the wagons, saying that they would hold up FISA 702. And remember, the FISA 702 program is a massive line item for defense spending, for government spending. It's about $6 billion a year. And a lot of that comes in the form of service contracts. To who? Defense contractors. And who do the defense contractors in turn donate to? Oh, that's right, United States senators, possibly even senators that are on the Intelligence Committee. Should we go here at Human Events Daily and take a look and see which U.S. defense contractors are donating to senators on the Defense Committee? We could easily do so. It's as simple as that. But President Trump has said, you know what? I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the Senate playing games. Not only am I canceling the hearing today, and Senator Cotton, I guess he didn't get the message because he said he was going to go forward with it, but then he came back a little bit later and said that they're going to be pulling it because the president canceled it. It would have been happening right now, but it's not, because President Donald J. Trump has decided it's time to play hardball with the United States Senate. Mr. President, we're fully behind you when it comes to that. Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Right back.
Will stand in our way, and our golden age has just begun.
This is Human Events with Jack Posobiec.
Now it's time for everyone to understand what America First truly means.
Welcome to the Second American Revolution.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live here, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Ladies and gentlemen, America hits 250 years, and we're fighting for its soul right now. Its culture, its economy. Who gets your dollar? That's the battle. Most wireless companies, they don't care who you stand for. They just want your cash. But Patriot Mobile is different. For more than 12 years, they've stood with Americans like us, backing the Christian conservative movement when everyone else stayed silent or worse. Now, here's the deal. You don't have to give up quality or service when you switch to Patriot Mobile. They deliver premium priority access on all 3 major U.S. networks, so you'll get the same coverage or better than you have today. Think switching is a hassle? It isn't. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Their 100% U.S.-based customer support team can activate you in minutes. Still paying off of a device? Patriot Mobile even offers a contract buyout. This is a defining year. We're in a fight for America's soul. We must work together to save our country. Go to patriotmobile.com/POSO or call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code POSO for a free month of service. That's patriotmobile.com/POSO or 972-PATRIOT. Make the switch today. All right, I want to bring in here Washington Bureau Chief Matt Boyle of Breitbart News, because the president's comments there at the G7 really popping off. Stock market obviously having a reaction. The Iran deal, one of the biggest talks, saying that, that we could have kept dropping bombs, then they would have never had it open. The past 2 days are a chance to get to the table. Didn't want to see the economic catastrophe, et cetera, et cetera. President Macron and others said they love the deal. The Gulf nations love the deal, saying that Iran would have obliterated the Middle East. Also said that he spoke with Zelensky and Putin, expressing hope with a number of both sides there and hopefully getting to an end on Ukraine. But Boyle, what I'll ask you about is we got the president up there, and he's in sales mode. He's making his pitch for the deal. We're also seeing these various versions of the deal floating around, 12 points, 14 points. What do we make of all this?
Well, the final text has now been released. We have it. I mean, I literally got it 20 minutes ago. So from the White House. So like so we now know what the deal actually says. And so, I mean, I can literally tell you what it says and whatnot. I've been reading it during the commercial breaks. And so the fact of the matter is the various versions that were floating around out there in the media were all, not exactly right. And so some of them had some of the pieces of it right, but none of them had it exactly right. And I just think it tells you a lot about our establishment media and the globalist elites and whatnot, and all these people that believe in forever wars, that they're so desperate to try to tank this thing and not make it work. But the fact is that what the president and the vice president have been saying all week is that this is a deal that, again, first and foremost, the Iranians actually agreed to this. They actually said, quote, the Islamic Republic of Iran reaffirms that it shall not procure or develop nuclear weapons. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran have agreed to resolve the disposition of stockpiled enriched material pursuant to a mechanism that will be mutually agreed upon in accordance with the schedule mentioned in paragraph 7, with the minimum methodology to be down blending on site under supervision of the IAEA. The two parties also agreed to discuss the issue of enrichment and other mutually agreed matters related to the Islamic Republic of Iran's nuclear needs based on a satisfactory framework to being agreed upon in the final deal, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this is a massive win for the United States. President Trump secured what Barack Obama never could, which the Obama JCPOA put Iran on a pathway to a nuclear weapon. What President Trump has done here is ensured that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, period. End of discussion. That was the whole point of this, right? So that's why the president did what he did and made the bold decision to go into Iran in the first place. And that's what the objective was from the get-go, was to ensure that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, which the president has been clear about his entire adult life, since even before he got into politics, and then during each of his 3 campaigns for the White House. Particularly, again, in the 2024 campaign. So, again, the president has been, I think, vindicated by this agreement. I think it demonstrates the opportunities that exist in the Middle East, because if Iran actually does agree to that stuff, and then also to stop funding the terrorist proxies, and there's other things to be hammered out in an eventual final agreement that'll be worked out over the next 60 days. But the fact is that if the Iranians actually do follow these steps, then they're going to get access to the various frozen funds and sanctions relief and whatnot, but they don't get any of that stuff until they do the things that are laid out in the deal and in the future negotiations on this stuff. So it proves what the president, the vice president, others have been saying from the White House about this is exactly right. So the fact is that I think that this is going to end up becoming a massive win for President Trump. And look, at the end of the day, if the Iranians don't follow through on it, they don't get anything. They don't get any of the money. They don't get any of the sanctions relief. And guess what? They still don't get a nuclear weapon. So President Trump wins either way. And if the Iranians actually do act like a normal country, that's what the vice president's been out there saying. If the Iranians actually do act like a normal country, then they can become a part of civilization, and they can engage with the world economy, and they will help the Middle East as a region and whatnot. But if they keep funding terrorist proxies and they keep making moves towards a nuclear weapon and keep being a menace to the region and the world, then they're not going to get any of those things. So it's actually a pretty well structured deal if you actually read the text of this thing and understand it. And talk to the people that are leading this process. And again, the U.S. doesn't give up anything in the process, right? Like, so I think that it works out pretty well for the president.
And by the way,
and that's why I think the rest of the world likes it too. The NATO chief is out there praising it, and so are the European leaders.
And Matt, now that we're seeing it, that one of the pieces that I was kind of in one of those panel debates the other day about this. One of the pieces that I was going to be looking for was the stockpile, right? The stockpile of enriched material. And I know that I think in the Bloomberg points that they had released and the CNN as well as Axios, none of them actually included the specific line that I'm seeing here now from the White House. And this is something that the vice president has talked about. And so if you listen to J.D. Vance and took him at his word, that's what's actually in here. So again, what people need to understand is that the words we're looking at now were agreed upon by both sides. That's the United States and Iran. And here's the line. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran have agreed to resolve the disposition of stockpile enriched material pursuant to a mechanism that will be mutually agreed upon. So what they're talking about is the actual mechanism of resolving it is yet to be agreed to. That's what you just mentioned about either removing it completely, going in and digging it up, down blending it, perhaps a permanent burial,
that's
reinforcing
the
it
stuff
with
they'll
concrete,
sort
something
out over
like
the
that.
next 60 days.
That's what, right. That's what they'll sort out. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of people were saying that was not going to be in this deal, and that was not true. That was not true at all. And Vice President J.D. Vance said that was in there. Now we're seeing it in black and white that it was in there the whole time.
Yeah, there's a lot of liars out there who want the president to fail, and they want the United States to fail here, or they want to drag us into a forever war. They want us to have to send in ground troops or something like that. I think the president deserves enormous credit here. He achieved he took a massive swing by doing this, okay? Like, President Trump took a major risk by engaging in this whole thing. He could have just stayed on the sidelines like other American presidents have done and not done anything about this. He actually did address this. And the whole world all says they agree, right? Like, all these other world leaders all say that, Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. Then none of them does anything about it. Well, President Trump comes along, and here he does. He actually goes in and does something about it. And now we're going to get to an agreement here that doesn't drag us into a forever war, by the way. So President Trump achieved a massive military victory, total and complete victory for the U.S. military here, and now has, taken things onto the diplomatic track to finish the objective, which was the clear objective from the outset. I mean, I can't see this as anything other than a massive victory for the United States and for President Trump and for Western civilization in the whole world, which is why all these other world leaders, and I think the part of the reason why the president was so gung-ho about, a lot of people were like, Trump wants to sign it on his birthday. He wants to sign it on his birthday before, with a big party with the UFC at the White House. No, the reason why Trump wanted to have this thing wrapped up this weekend before he went over to the G7 is so the whole rest of the world leaders had to acknowledge the fact that this is a massive victory for the world, and it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for President Trump. Remember, our supposedly great allies, the British and the French, sat on the sidelines when this happened. NATO did not join us in this whole thing. There's a handful of allies that we had in the Gulf, and some others like the Greeks and whatnot that really did help us as we went into this whole thing. Like, the Greeks allowed us to use our military bases and whatnot in Crete, which is the last naval bases that can handle the aircraft carriers before you get to the Middle East. But even the Italians stopped us from using our military bases in Italy. That was the big dust up between Trump and Meloni, right? And again, Starmer and Macron have just been terrible throughout this whole thing. So the fact is that, and frankly, I got to give a massive shout out to the Greeks. The Greeks have really been the ally that the British and the French are supposed to be during President Trump's second term. But the fact of the matter is that, again, getting back to the core of this agreement, no matter what happens from here, first off, Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. And secondly, the opportunities to fundamentally remake the Middle East are real if Iran cooperates from here and actually delivers on all of these things. But if they don't, it doesn't matter. They're still never getting a nuclear weapon. It doesn't happen, no matter. And they're never getting any resources.
Exactly. No, incredible breakthrough from the president's team. We're digging through all of it now. It's just been released. The full text of the Trump-Iran deal has now been released. Jack Posobiec, Human Events Daily. Right back.
You talk about influencers. These are influencers, and they're friends of mine. Jack Posobiec. Where's Jack? Jack, who's done a great job.
Well, folks, remember, Saturday, and Sunday coming up this weekend. It's Father's Day coming upon us. This Father's Day is Sunday. Give your dad the gift of a great night's sleep. Pay him back for all those sleepless nights you gave him as a kid. Probably some of the sleepless nights that you gave him as a teenager as well. Am I right? I'm just saying, look, our kids, we got the ghost bed at the Poso household. Our kids, our boys, Jack, and AJ, they love crawling in there with us. They love it every single time. They say, Daddy, Mommy, how is your bed so nice? What happened? It's simple. We got the ghost bed. Look, folks, Ghost Bed is a family-owned and operated company with 3 generations of doing business in the United States. It's also American-made. So you know that you're putting American workers to work. Right now, you can get up to 101 nights to try Ghost Bed at home. If you don't feel the difference, you can send it back risk-free right now. Ghost Bed is offering my audience their lowest prices of the season, plus an extra 10% off. We just go over to ghostbed.com/POSO and use promo code POSO to find out. That's ghostbed.com/POSO, promo code POSO. And so this is what I wanted to do. During the break just now, I pulled up CNN.com, and it went through their old article of the original points that they had leaked, and then I pulled up the points of what the current deal is. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It's exactly what I thought. That bit about the enriched uranium, specifically those stockpiles, was not in CNN's draft agreement. They didn't have it. Their agreement said, oh, we'll figure that out later. No. When you look at the actual 14 points that have been released now by the White House and you compare it to the original that CNN's in, and gosh, you know, I wouldn't want to accuse CNN of being fake news. Perish the thought, I would never. But I would say that this is completely different. It has been agreed upon. This is absolutely massive. It's absolutely key. It's something that Barack Obama was never able to get done, that Obama was never able to put in on this, that the enriched material will either be removed or will be, and at a minimum, will be downblended. That's all. They've already agreed to downblend it. That means that's already in the deal. And I want to bring Matt Boyle back in here from Breitbart, that at the very end, it says the final deal will be endorsed by a binding UNSCR. And an UNSCR is a United Nations Security Council resolution, which says to me that guess what? That means he's got Russia and China on board, or they're very, very close to being on board, as well as the French and the British, which, of course, is why he was talking about the fact that Macron was celebrating the deal. And, of course, he's about to have dinner with Emmanuel Macron right now. Matt Boyle, far be it from me but this feels like a major diplomatic coup by the president.
Yeah, it does. And again, the fact about the UN Security Council resolution, too, is a big deal, because this is, again, something that Barack Obama was never able to get done. And I think that, look, at the end of the day, here's the thing. This is not the final deal. This is the memorandum of understanding to do a 60-day ceasefire, end hostilities, and then begin the deeper negotiations towards the final deal. And the hope is that we'll get to a final deal. But either way, it's worth noting, first off, Iran gets nothing unless they take the various steps forward that are necessary to become like a normal country. And secondly, that the Iran will never, actually, arguably, firstly, and more importantly, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon either way, right? Like, because they've been decimated. So we know, and if we have to, as the president made clear during his commentary at the G7, he just wrapped the press conference moments ago, where he talked about this, is that, again, if we have to, we'll go back to bombing them again. Right, like, but the point is that they've been set back a generation in terms of the nuclear program anyway, because of the Operation Midnight Hammer last summer and Epic Fury this spring. And so those two things combined ensure that Iran will never get a nuclear weapon. The hope is that now they take the diplomatic off-ramp and agree to become a normal country and formally ditch their nuclear ambitions and join the rest of the world economy, because they're a huge country with major energy resources, frankly, energy resources that are not being exploited to their fullest potential. And this is where things could really get interesting. Now, this is not in the text of this memorandum of understanding. And I don't even think the final deal would say this. But the fact is that where this could really go, and I think that the president has already demonstrated this with Venezuela and other places around the world, both our friends and allies, is the president has used American energy companies, which are the greatest energy companies on the planet, okay? Chevron, ExxonMobil, etc. The American energy companies that do the oil and natural gas stuff are better than anything else out there on planet Earth. And we see this with our allies, our friends and allies. Greece and Cyprus are both doing this, where they're using Chevron and Exxon to get the natural gas out from under the sea. Or in the case of Venezuela, which was a now former adversary, now it looks like they're an ally, or at least a friend. Chevron is there doing the oil. So the Iran has both oil and natural gas, and they aren't getting them to the fullest potential. If the U.S. and Iran are able to sort this stuff out, and Iran again starts behaving like a normal country and stops funding the terrorist proxies and stops being a menace in the region, truly ditches the nuclear program, we could be talking about global prosperity. Unlike anything we've ever seen before, if the Iranians actually do this kind of stuff in the right way. And it will really help them too in a big way. And frankly, it would help the region. So what President Trump has done here, and you hear the vice president talk about this, about how this has the potential to fundamentally change the Middle East and usher in a new era of peace to a region that's been unstable for generations. That's what they mean by this. And I think that it allows us to, again, shift our gaze where? Elsewhere in the world.
China.
Where are the biggest threats?
To China.
Exactly.
Just say it, China. Matt Boyle, incredible analysis, taking us around the horn. Finally, the focus gets to be on China, where, of course, you have argued, I've argued for so many years. That's where it really needs to be. Matt Boyle, where can people follow you, brother?
Just on X at mboyle1 and True Social at Real Matt Boyle.
All right, God bless. We'll right back with a huge update in the Tyler Robinson case. Human Events Daily.
Jack. Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. You know, we have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys who should be getting Pulitzers.
All right, Jack Posobiec back live here, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. And as we're perusing through, the international news, we want to jump now to big news from the Post-Millennial. Had this and a big filing that came out of the Tyler Robinson trial, something that a lot of us had suspected and is now being confirmed in a new document, that Tyler Robinson's trans lover, Lance Twiggs, was in fact given limited immunity ahead of the Charlie Kirk murder trial. I want to get Will Chamberlain in here now because he'll help walk us through what this is, what this means. It's a type of immunity, as I'm understood, it's called use immunity. And I want to walk through the specifics of that, what can we expect as the preliminary hearing is expected to take place. Everyone's so excited for America's 250th, but 1 week, the Monday after, just 2 days after the 250th, this preliminary hearing is set to kick off in a courthouse in Provo, Utah. Will Chamberlain of the Article 3 Project joins us now. Will, how are you?
Doing great.
So, Will, does it surprise you that at all that Lance Twiggs was given any form of, or this form of immunity here in exchange for his testimony?
Not at all. I mean, I think this is, I think the prosecutors very much wanted to have his testimony. And if I were Twiggs's lawyer, I would have told my client that he needed to plead the fifth in relation to any testimony in the absence of some sort of immunity. But the entire point of use immunity is, and what that means is that the prosecutors are not allowed to use that testimony to prosecute as evidence against him, and they're not allowed to use that testimony to create leads to go off of. So, I mean, if independent evidence of a crime arises elsewhere, that can still be used to prosecute the guy, but you can't. Basically, the testimony and the fruits of the testimony can't be used to prosecute him. And that's the kind of thing that would be necessary to get, I mean, obviously, just to be able to compel him to testify and get what he knows on the record.
So this is the type of thing, I guess explain it to us to say, if there were a drug gang or something like that, and you were looking to prosecute the leader of the drug gang, perhaps you might give use immunity to one of the lower associates, something like that.
I wouldn't say it's about lesser associates. It's really about what kind of cooperation do you need and what's the specific purpose. So basically, use immunity is what is just limited to the testimony. What's called transactional immunity says that if you testify in relation to something, you are immune from prosecution from the subject matter of your testimony, not merely immune from having that testimony used against you. So it's a much bigger grant of immunity to say somebody's transactionally immune. That's the kind of thing you'd give to someone if you really just have no intention of prosecuting them at all and really want them to be a very fulsome cooperator. That would be the kind of thing you might do in a sort of like drug, in a drug type of case where you give a full, basically, if you're trying to threaten someone and get them to fully cooperate with you, and you think there's no other way, you give them full transactional immunity from the prosecution so that they give you what you need to get the kingpin or something. Here, the use immunity is very often used by prosecutors during grand jury testimony, or just in any situation where you think that somebody you need testimony from is going to plead the Fifth Amendment. The idea being that the Fifth Amendment no longer applies, because if your testimony can't be used against you in a criminal prosecution, you have no reasonable fear that it will incriminate you.
So, and this is very interesting, because what I want folks to understand is that what you're saying, if I understand this correctly, is that the limited immunity here does mean that there's a likelihood that Lance, and as we already know, just based on the charging documents and reports that have come out, he himself was involved at a few certain stages in the underlying behavior, in the underlying activity, that he had some level perhaps of foreknowledge of what happened here. And he is going to be testifying to that, or at least, by the way, knowledge after the fact. We know for a fact that he knew after the fact, and of course, did not contact law enforcement, that it was the parents of Tyler Robinson that contacted law enforcement. And of course, this would potentially lead to him being called to testify on things that could open him up to legal immunity, especially, by the way, as we were told that if he took steps to perhaps destroy either these handwritten messages or other things in their shared apartment, that could lead police to identify Tyler Robinson as the murderer of Charlie Kirk. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think the most you can 100% guarantee, or not 100%, but basically guarantee, is that the guy was going to claim the Fifth Amendment, and that was the basis on which he was going to refuse to both talk to prosecutors and testify. And they knew that. And so this was the only way to really solve that problem. And it's a fair way. Also, it's a way of solving that problem in a way that doesn't necessarily preclude, if there's independent evidence of Twiggs's crimes, use immunity here does not give him a get out of jail free card on that stuff. But it does mean that they'll be able to get him on the record. I think so. That's what it means. The extent of his involvement is really up in the air, and people can make Fifth Amendment claims even when their connection to the criminal activity is tenuous, because obviously, like, if you remember, it's just a reasonable fear that your testimony might incriminate you, and so that's even if you're unsure, even if you're not so certain. So I wouldn't say that it's you should read too much into the fact that he was given use immunity, other than I would say that he was definitely ready to make a Fifth Amendment claim in order to avoid testifying or giving information to the police. But given the other facts we know in this case, I think it's pretty obvious he was.
Sure, but and that's kind of what I mean, is that we do have independent information involving him. We know that he didn't call the police. We know that the letter, somebody burned the letter, or tried to burn the handwritten note that was left at their house, which presumably would be the only other person in the house, which would be the roommate. And but we also know that I believe there was another series of either text or Discord messages where Tyler Robinson was trying to get Twiggs to come help him, to come pick him up, I think from his parents' house or something, and Twiggs actually refuses. So, there's several degrees of behavior after this, but that we already do know about. But at the same time, to your point, it does seem as though a few of those may actually kind of tip over into crossing the line over, what could potentially be a prosecutable offense.
Yeah, and I mean, again, if you were Lance Twiggs' lawyer and you didn't want to get disbarred, your first piece of advice to him would be you're not talking to the police in the absence of an immunity deal. Right. It's just really, really simple. Right. Like, don't let him incriminate himself. That's very, very basic. And so,
because the lawyer,
that really, I think, is the impetus.
Sorry to jump in again, but because the lawyer, may not know the full extent of what Lance has done or what he might say. And, as a lawyer, of course, you hope that your client is telling you the truth because, of course, those conversations are protected by privilege. But he doesn't know. He doesn't know what he doesn't know. It's the unknown unknowns, of course, that are what his lawyer is, of course, trying to cover up what goes in there, because we could, and I don't want to get too far afield in terms of speculation, but there could be all sorts of other things that come out in this testimony. Although I believe that what the current fight is that they have, I guess, 2 recordings of Twiggs under oath. One which he took on either September 11th or 12th, so right in the aftermath of Charlie's murder, and then another from April of this year, so about several months later, where they go back and he corroborates many of the things that he says. And Will, do I have this correct, that they want to play that tape of Twiggs at the preliminary hearing, whereas now Tyler Robinson's lawyers are fighting that Twiggs himself should actually appear?
Ooh, interesting. I didn't actually catch that bit in terms of I'm not familiar with that, but that's always one of those very interesting questions. I think it's
the latest back and forth. It seems to be the latest back and forth between the two sides.
Right. So at trial, there's no question about the fact that he would have to testify, right? You're not allowed to play the recording of somebody testifying previously when they are living and could be there to answer questions. That's because of the confrontation clause of the Constitution, you're allowed the right to confront your accusers. So unless they're dead, but if they're alive and living, they can't. You can't just play a recording of a deposition. They need to show up and testify in person so you can cross-examine them. So that's now the question. The interesting question is, does that apply at the preliminary hearing? And again, I think we've discussed this before on this program. The whole point of the preliminary hearing is merely to show that there is an evidentiary basis to go forward with the prosecution, that there's probable cause, and so. My suspicion is that the constitutional protections at the evidentiary hearing stage are much more minimal. And so I don't know how Utah handles this or what the case law is on the specifics of, we know the guy needs to show up at trial, but does he need to show up at the preliminary hearing, or can they rely on a deposition? That's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, I think ultimately it's all going to be immaterial because this is going to get past a preliminary hearing.
Quick break, but yes, I agree with you there. This is about the preliminary hearing, which comes up in about 2 weeks' time. Right back, Human Events Daily.
Call this the Jack Posobiec Appreciation Hour. I can say confidently, I think Josh Shapiro would be the vice presidential nominee if it wasn't for Jack Posobiec. And that is, I'll be honest.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. We are getting closer and closer. In 2.5 weeks, the preliminary hearing of Tyler Robinson, the first time that we've seen a preliminary hearing in this case, will be seated. And of course, his defense is trying everything under the sun to block that or delay that. They've already had one delay. They're trying to block various pieces of evidence. They're trying to block cameras. They're trying to block exhibits from the cameras. They're doing everything they can to put the brakes on this and to hide it from public scrutiny. Will Chamberlain, we were just talking about how Twiggs has this immunity deal, this limited immunity deal. But so the fact that one deal has already come in for a witness, now that certainly doesn't, shouldn't surprise anyone. But let's look at Tyler Robinson for a second here as well, since we're on the subject of deals. Do you think that it's possible that he, in fact, takes a plea deal at any point in this to prevent having to face the death penalty?
I mean, I think he would have to, I mean, I doubt it. I don't think there's any, I think the prosecution wants to take this case to trial. I think they have overwhelming evidence that he is the guilty party. And so from their perspective, they want to go for the death penalty and they don't want him to plea out. They're not worried about, I would be shocked if there's a plea deal in this case, but it's not because I think Robinson would take a deal, honestly. I think Robinson, if he was offered life in prison, would take it.
Well, and that's in fact what happened with Brian Kohberger, who was, was going to face trial for the murder of 4 sorority students, sorority girls up in Idaho, and he eventually did take a deal just before it went to trial. There was, I don't know that the evidence was quite as strong in his case as it is in this case. They had a sheath, a knife sheath with one partial fingerprint on it. I'm just doing this from memory, and they had a couple of pings from his cell phone, but and one kind of blurry late night description of a tall thin man by one of the girls who survived, and so it was nowhere near the mountain of evidence that we see in the Tyler Robinson situation.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I don't begrudge those prosecutors from looking at the evidence they had and thinking that it was wise to take life in prison rather than take some risk that a jury might just at the end have some doubts about whether it was they were sure it was him. It seems like Kohberger was much better at covering his tracks. In general, left much less evidence of his involvement, and so it just would have been a trickier trial. This is not that. I mean, you have the camera footage, the physical evidence. Yeah, go ahead.
He was in fact a criminal justice. He's either a master's student or a PhD student, if I remember correctly. So he was actually studying criminology as he conducted his heinous action. So certainly something that he was far more familiar with than it seems that Tyler Robinson would be.
Right, exactly. And I think that, the evidence against Robinson is overwhelming. You have the video evidence, the physical evidence, DNA evidence, the testimonial evidence from his parents, the whole story of how he was arrested. His own text messages, Twiggs. I mean, it's just going to be overwhelming at trial. So I suspect what's happening here is I don't think these prosecutors are even slightly interested in a plea deal, even for life in prison. I think they are extremely confident they will get a conviction. And when they do, that they will seek the death penalty.
Now, that said, looking forward to the preliminary hearing, 2.5 weeks time kicks off right there. I believe it's July 6th is the first day of it there in Provo, Utah. What should we expect? So, I imagine police officers, detectives, that's really when they're going to start presenting this in a way that just hasn't occurred yet with, some limited releases, either at press conferences or a few things that have gone up on the docket. This will be the first time that a lot of the evidence is really unsealed in court.
Yeah, I think that's it'll be a really good opportunity for not just because I think they've already said that this is going to be public. We're going to learn a lot about the case. We're going to learn and stuff that we haven't seen before because this is the first time where prosecutors are really showing what is the actual evidence we're going to bring to trial here. And, we've seen plenty of it already. It's been hinted at. We had obviously all the evidence that was revealed in the immediate aftermath of the Kirk shooting. But there's, they've had almost a full year now to develop even more evidence. And I'm sure they've got quite a bit more.
I think that's exactly right. And of course, the defense is trying to say that, this evidence is going to prejudice a jury. And I kind of was thinking about something that the judge had said earlier in one of his other rulings. And it's sort of like, well, that's the whole point of evidence, isn't it? To prejudice a jury.
Yes. I think that might be an interesting argument about.
But it's not prejudice, right? It's actually just to confirm that which has occurred, to convince someone of the veracity of the allegations.
Maybe if you're a judge, you might think to yourself, you want to resolve some of these admissibility questions beforehand if you could. I don't know. I mean, timing's obviously weird. Most of the trial's still a long way away. But no, I think you're right. The idea that the whole point is to have admissible evidence, prejudice a jury one way or the other. That's why they bother showing it to you.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point. That's the point of the system, folks. You don't get to argue that, Your Honor, there's too much evidence against my client. We shouldn't let potential jurors see this because
it's not fair. It needs to be
evidence...
proportional, right? The prosecution and the defense need to have a proportional amount of evidence each in this trial. Otherwise, it's unfair.
Yeah, we need to have evidence for our. Well, do you have any? Has your client provided you any? Are there character witnesses? Even I don't know, an alibi or some mitigating circumstance that you could point us to? Feel free. That's your job, by the way, as his representative in court.
Yeah, I think we've seen this already over the course of the past year, and we're going to see it more and more as we get closer and closer to trial. It's not really a defensible case, and so the defense attorneys are going to pull on every thread that they can in terms of procedural shenanigans to try and delay and obfuscate and drag their feet, create doubt. But and so it'll look more and more bizarre as time goes on. But this is a very bad case. This is an extraordinarily hard criminal defense.
I've said it time and again. There's that phrase that I think you were probably the first one who told me about it years ago. But when the facts are on your side, pound the facts. When the law is on your side, pound the law. And when neither of those are on your side, pound the table. That's right, pound the table. So I expect a lot of table pounding. Let's look. This is a case where the same lawyer as one of the approved public defenders there in Utah just defended this Corey Rysons, I believe was the name of the individual, the woman who murdered her husband with a Moscow Mule over embezzling of defense contractor payments, just a few months ago, which was an extremely
with a cocktail. How do you murder
case.
someone with a cocktail? Like, did you poison it? I'm curious now.
Poisoned a Moscow Mule. Poisoned a Moscow
goodness.
Mule.
Okay.
And this was, I'll have to send you the details, but it was in fact the same Kathy and Esther who was, I don't know if she was a lead lawyer, but she was on the team. And they did not even present a defense in brief. They did not even put on a defense at all. They just said, this is, this case is no good. And this woman, which horrific, 3 children, by the way, who were murdered, who are now essentially orphaned by this woman's behavior, who the oldest of which I believe put out a statement said that we fear for our life because of our mom. We're terrified of our mother. And so again, in one of these situations where that is kind of what you're left with sometimes because the facts just aren't on your side. Will Chamberlain, thank you so much for your work and analysis, yeoman's work on all of this, helping us to make sense of the legalese. And perhaps, who knows, perhaps we will be doing some more in-depth coverage in the coming days. Where can people follow you?
At Will Chamberlain on X, and follow the Article 3 Project, a3paction.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.